made him talk about it. Yeah. And if anyone's really upset, they can fight a pregnant woman in the hallway. So bring it on.
Okay. Awesome. And I gotta hold all this crap. I don't know where else. Over here, maybe. Okay, welcome everybody. As Rebecca said, Wade Weiss, UAA Aviation Technology Division, and yeah, here to give human factors presentation. I'm going to go ahead and put a plug in for my program that I've been working on. Air carriers actually came to UAA a number of years ago. Some of you guys may have heard about it, the Mechanic Helper Education Program. They were wanting an online program, or asked us to develop an online program for guys and gals that are out in rural Alaska that either can't or don't want to come to a formal Part 147 school, working on their A&P through experience, and a different way of gaining the academic side of what they're hopefully learning in the shops. And I've been working on the Mechanic Helpers Education Program, the MHEP, for a number of years. And I've got, it's based off 8083, and I've got the general handbook done with a few airframe and a few power plant presentations out there as well. And I've been kind of sucked more into actually teaching classes at the university, so I haven't put a whole lot of more time into it. So 23 programs out there, mostly general subjects, and a few airframe and a power plant. I say all that to encourage you guys, if you have apprentices or mechanic helpers that are wanting to help study for gaining the knowledge of becoming an A&P mechanic, that program is out there. I got business cards, or Google UAA MHEP, it's out there as well. I say all that to also bring up the fact that the presentation I'm going to be giving you guys today is directly from that program. I know it's going to be a lot of slides, and we're kind of over time anyway, so I'm going to flip through some of them quick, but I kind of left it mostly as is, just to give you guys an idea of what the program's about, and demo of one of the presentations that are out there. I've added a few extra, I guess, graphics, you could say, to try and make the topic a little more engaging and slightly entertaining. So with that said, I'll go ahead and press on here. Been a few incidents in the news here recently. I'm assuming everybody's familiar with the big ones. A lot going on in the aviation community. Atlas had the 4.7 with the engine fire. Might be a few folks that are intimately involved with this one as well. I'm sure everybody's familiar with it. Not good things going on over in Japan. Virgin Atlantic had some screws missing from the wing. I know there's a joke in there somewhere, but I'm gonna let it go. Even GA community, I guess Caravan, where was this, in Washington, had some issues here recently as well. Military had a B-1 go down in Ellsworth not so long ago either. So lots going on in the aviation community. All this is kind of the bad stuff. It's the stuff that makes the news. I've seen a couple of different numbers on it, 30,000 GA and commercial flights a day, 40,000. Like I said, I've seen a couple of different numbers, but we don't talk about the good stuff, right? We don't talk about the good flights and the good landings. We always talk about the bad ones. But I would argue that regardless if it's the accidents and incidents or the successful flights that happen on a daily basis, human factors is involved in all of them in one way or another. Some in a good way, some in a bad way. So start out with just some general definitions. And again, you guys, this is not some cosmic level IA level kind of human factors. So this is going to be hopefully a review for a lot of you, a refresher, if you will, of human factors. So we'll just go on with that. 75 to 80% of the aviation accidents are a result of human error. Now, we'll talk about human error a little bit more later on in the presentation, but definitely human factors, human error go into incidents and accidents. About 12% are maintenance related. Pilot, co-pilot errors, yeah, pretty obvious and pretty easy to point out. This one, the conclusion from the Air Force accident, this is the C-17 that went down in 2010, by the way, was clear and convincing evidence that it was pilot error. So a lot of times when it's pilot error, it's pretty obvious. when it comes to maintenance issues with incidents and accidents, typically more latent and a little bit harder to find. But I was actually the interim safety investigation board member on that accident. But it was eye-opening to say the least. But yeah, that one, easy to point out pilot error. But is it really that easy? Or do we need to ask some questions? Why? Why was it pilot error? Why did the mechanic do what he did? Or why did he not do what he did? And I'm gonna kind of put on my aircraft accident investigation hat a little bit through this presentation, and kind of lead to, when we're talking about human factors, a lot of times you need to go into a little bit more than that and ask some whys. We'll get to that at the very end. So a few definitions. Human factors are the study of how people interact with environments. They're concerned with optimizing performance, ideally looking at trying to be safer, more productive. Human factors are the elements that affect our behavior and performance, especially those that may cause us to make errors. Speaking of errors, human error is the unintentional act of performing a task incorrectly that could potentially degrade the system. Universally agreed that about 80% of maintenance errors do involve human factors. Some examples, and we'll go through a list towards the end of the presentation as well, but parts installed incorrectly, missing parts, necessary checks not being performed. In this particular incident, actuator is improperly installed. But why? Was human factors involved as to why the actuator was improperly installed? We're not going to get into that right now, but in comparison, many of the other threats to aviation safety, the mistakes of aviation maintenance, or the AMT, again, you guys, this presentation was written for the MHEP and for a entry-level maintainer to learn some knowledge, so bear with me on some of the acronyms, or the explanations. So it can be a little bit more difficult to detect. This particular incident, there was some cables that were crossed at the end and caused the accident. It happens. Was human factors involved? Yeah, it was. So AMTs are confronted with a set of human factors unique within aviation. Can be working in the evenings, working night shift, as I'm sure you guys all know, has its own challenges. Early mornings, confined spaces, high platforms, and a variety of adverse temperatures, humidity, and conditions. And that certainly applies for us here in Alaska, as I'm sure you all know. I won't discuss the tall ladder fixing the de-icing boot on that, but I didn't enjoy being on top of that ladder. I'll just leave it at that. Human factors involved. The work can be physically strenuous. It can also require attention to detail, but because the nature of maintenance tasks, AMTs commonly spend more time prepping for the task. Can you guys relate? Looking up tech data, trying to find part numbers, and this guy, kind of an example of that happening there. And in the Air Force, we said the jet doesn't fly until the paperwork's done. Same thing here, you guys. Obviously, you got to finish the logbooks and make sure everything is up to date. Mildly humorous. I'm sure many of you guys can relate to that as well. So what are human factors? The term human factors has grown increasingly popular in the commercial aviation industry as the commercial aviation industry realizes that human error rather than mechanical failure underlies most aviation accidents and incidents. So it's typically not just something failing. There's human factors involved with it, whether it be from the engineering aspect, the design, the manufacturing, or the maintenance. So some terms that cover the science of understanding, or it is a term that covers the science of understanding the properties of human capability, application of this understanding to the design, development, and deployment of systems. And if anybody's worked on a Caravan and pulled the engine cowling off and put it back on, you can probably appreciate the fact that that guy, whoever designed those, didn't go through maintenance human factors training, in my opinion, because it's not fun to do. Whole spectrum of human factors that can affect aviation maintenance and work performance. We won't get into all those. And unfortunately, aviation maintenance tasks that do not take into account the vast amount of human limitations can result in technical errors and injuries. And that's what we're trying to avoid, you guys: safety, accidents, incidents. So some elements of human factors comprise of many different disciplines. We're going to go through 10 of them. And the goal of aviation maintenance human factors is research is to identify and optimize the factors that affect human performance in maintenance and inspection. And again, safety is a big driver in that. So just some of the top, or some of the different areas that's covered. Clinical psychology, it focuses on mental well-being of the individual. It can, clinical psychology can help individuals deal with stress. I don't know if that guy had much stress at the time, but one of the aspects that can help with some human factors issues. Experimental psychology includes the study of a variety of basic behavioral processes, often in a laboratory environment. That guy looks way too happy, so I'm guessing that's a laboratory environment. In an effort to test the efficiency of work policies and procedures, experimental studies are done and hopefully improve all the processes. Anthropometry is the way, I had to Google it, and I'm pretty sure that's the way Google told me to say it anyway. It's the study of dimensions and abilities of the human body. Essential to aviation maintenance due to the environments and spaces AMTs have to work in. The one size fits all does not apply for AMTs. Big guys having to crawl into the cargo bay of a caravan, not fun. Smaller folks can get in there. So computer science, yeah, computers are becoming more prevalent in aviation maintenance, as everybody knows. Software programs and computer-based test equipment should be easy to learn and use and not intended only for those with high levels of computer literacy. I almost take offense to that because they're saying that you may not know how to use computers, but cognitive science is the interdisciplinary scientific study of minds as information processors. And as AMTs, we need to process information and respond quickly, right? Some can solve problems quicker than others. They are constantly required to troubleshoot situations, quickly react to them, which can be stressful. Of course, anything in aviation maintenance can be stressful, but when you're troubleshooting something, it can be especially stressful. So safety engineering ensures that the life-critical systems behave as needed, even when a component fails. We all know that we've got redundant systems in aircraft for safety reasons, and safety engineering kind of takes that same concept of trying to design out flaws and potential issues that's going to cause problems in the future. So that's the idea of that. For us in maintenance, when that fails, we've got warnings, cautions, and notes. Medical science, as the name implies, is the science of art of healing. It encompasses the variety of healthcare practices evolved to maintain and restore health by the prevention and treatment of illness. And disposition and physical well-being are very important and directly correlated to human factors, just like everything else. So take care of yourself, and that's going to help with everything else that comes along with it. And organizational psychology. Organizational psychologists are concerned with relations between people and work. Their interests include organizational structure and organizational change, workers' productivity, job satisfaction, consumer behavior, and the selection, placement, training, and development of personnel. I'm assuming that when it comes to job satisfaction, some of you guys can relate to her. It says 10 minutes into work. It says 10 minutes into work, and I start. That's covered up. So, educational psychology, study of how people learn and design the methods and materials used to educate people of all ages. Everyone learns at a different pace, so you got to teach folks differently based on their capabilities. Supervisors should design blocks of instruction that relate to a wide variety of learning styles. Industrial engineering is the organized approach to the study of work. It's important for supervisors to set reasonable work standards. Everybody set reasonable work standards for your folks? Scott? Yeah, all right. That can be met and exceeded. Unrealistic work standards create unnecessary stressors that can cause mistakes. Ideally, working in an environment like that where everything's nice and pristine, you've got great stands and perfect tools and everything. Efficient facilities is good for industrial engineering when you come to that. Oh shoot, that wasn't supposed to be, oh dang, that wasn't supposed to be in there either. There's some previous kind of cluttered areas. So in the program, there are review questions or review slides occasionally through each course. I went ahead and left them in there. If you guys want to play along, you can, but Yeah, approximately 75 to 80% of aviation accidents are result of human factors. And in the book, 8083, and on pages, and this might have changed with the update, 14.6 through 14.9 is a history of human factors. And if you're a history buff, you can certainly refer to those if you want to. Pair model, hopefully folks are somewhat familiar with this. Many concepts related to the science and practice of human factors. From a practical standpoint, it is most helpful to have a unified view or a model of the things we should be concerned about when considering aviation maintenance human factors. And we'll go through each of these sections one at a time. So the P stands for the people who do the job, us and our fellow maintainers, mechanics, environment in which they do the work, actions they perform, and resources necessary to complete the job. It kind of encompasses all of it, but back when I was in the Air Force, I had a wise chief once explain to me that my job as a maintenance supervisor was to provide the guys and the gals working on the airplanes the tools, the time, and the training so that they could do their job. And I'd kind of like to think that this relates to that. Give your guys and gals the tools, what do they need, the time enough to do the job without being overly stressed, and the training to be able to do it. And I think you've got pretty much a lot of it covered. I think it relates to this somewhat. So the people. Aviation maintenance human factor programs focus on the people who perform work and address physical, physiological, psychological, and physio-social factors, which includes interpersonal conflicts. There's no interpersonal conflicts in aviation maintenance, is there? Program focuses on individuals, their physical abilities, and the factors that affect them. They should also consider the mental state, cognitive capacity, and conditions that may affect interactions with others. Again, I think everybody can relate to that. Companies may need to have substance abuse programs. The environment, there's at least two: physical workplace on the ramp and the hangar in the shop. In addition, the organizational environment that exists within the company, so more of a internal environment. Human factors program must pay attention to both. The physical, pretty obvious. It includes ranges of the temperature, humidity, lighting, noise control, cleanliness, workplace design. Companies acknowledge that these conditions and must acknowledge these conditions and cooperate with workforce to either accommodate or change the physical environment. I haven't worked at Bering Air up at Nome, but I'm guessing it can be cold, and I'm not sure what you can do about it. I have gotten fairly intimate with a few other caravans back at Aerotwin, but haven't worked up there. But always remember, if you're cold, they're cold, bring them inside, right? So the topic overlaps with resources. The resources component of the pair when it comes to providing heaters, lighting, clothing. Again, time, the tools, the time, and the training is what I relate that to. Organizational environment, a little bit less tangible. It involves an organizational environment are typically related to cooperation, communication, and shared values, mutual respect, which we all have, I'm sure. An excellent organizational environment is promoted with leadership, communication, shared goals associated with safety, profitability, and other key factors. The best companies guide and support their people and foster a culture of safety. Actions. Successful human factors programs carefully analyze all of the actions people must perform to complete a job efficiently and safety. Job task analysis, JTAs, you guys are familiar with those. Helps identify what instructions, tools, and other resources are necessary to make sure folks can do their jobs and do it safely and correctly. Resources, again, tools, time, and training. R is for resources. It is sometimes difficult to separate resources from the other elements, because if you don't provide the resources, folks can't do their job. So in general, the characteristics of the people, environment, actions dictate the resources. Many resources are tangible: tools, test equipment, computers, tech data, and so forth. Others are less. Examples include the number of qualifications, again, training, make sure you got your folks trained to where they need to be, the amount of time allocated, and the level of communication among the crew and supervisors. Resources should be viewed and defined from a broad perspective. A resource is anything a technician or anyone else needs to get the job done. What is important in the resource element in the pair is focusing on identifying the need for additional resources. So that was the pair model, and hopefully you guys are somewhat familiar with it. The next model is the shell model, is another concept for investigating, evaluating maintenance errors. As with other human factors tools, its goal is to determine not only what the problem is, but why and where it exists. Again, when I go back to when you identify something, it's a human error. Well, you need to ask why. Where did that human error come from? And see if you can identify where it exists. The model examines interaction with each of the 4 shells components, but does not consider interactions not involving human factors. Software, not necessarily about the computer programs. It's more of a broader view of layout, checklists, symbology, language, and computer programs is included as well. Hardware, such things as location of components, accessibility of components, and tooling. But we all know engineers hate mechanics, and I'm sure you guys have seen it, but there you go. They should all be shot, in my personal opinion. And yeah, I'll leave it at that. So the environment, temperature, humidity, sound, light, and a time of day. Of course, it's pretty obvious. Liveware relates to technician interaction with other people, both on and off the job. Includes managers, peers, families, and self. Human factors, you gotta have the Swiss cheese model, right? So here we go. Note the high-speed graphic down at the bottom. Try to not let it avert your gaze too much because it is pretty exciting. Obviously, Riesen's theory, the Swiss cheese, and you guys know how this works. 4 levels of failure are typically organizational influence, unsafe supervision, preconditions for an unsafe act, and the unsafe act themselves. The slices of cheese are processes and stuff that are implemented to mitigate these levels of failure. Unfortunately, sometimes the holes in the cheese line up, and as the high-speed graphic shows, it results in a bang. So there you go. Holes in cheese slice represent individual weaknesses, and the whole system produces failures when the holes line up. Trajectory of an accident. Should be familiar with that, right? 2 types of failures which can occur, active and latent. The active failure is one that the effects are immediate. Happens way too often, but an example of this type would be an aircraft slipping off a lifting jack due to improperly placement of a technician. And in this example, the jack is approved, good, everything's working properly, and it has been properly maintained. Unfortunately, it still happens, stuff still happens, right? Latent failure occurs as a result of a decision or action made long before the incident, or incident or accident actually occurs. Consequences of such a decision may remain dormant for a long time. An example of a latent failure could also involve the aircraft slipping off the jack, but it could be an unapproved jack being used because the funding had not been approved to purchase the correct ground support equipment. This again goes into my ask why. Why'd the aircraft slip off the jack? We were using the wrong jack. Why? Because we didn't order the right jack. Why? Because we don't have enough. Keep asking why. I'm not going to say if that's approved or not. You guys know about that. Organizational offenses against the that's the slices of Swiss cheese. Probably familiar with this accident as well. But human error is defined as a human action with unintended consequences. When you couple error with aviation maintenance, it becomes extremely troublesome. Words straight out of 8083. Training, risk assessment, safety inspections, etc. should not be restricted to an attempt to avoid errors, but rather to make them visible and identify them before they produce damaging and regrettable consequences. So if you're always looking for what could potentially cause an incident or accident, that's the way to go. This one, well, simply put, human error is not avoidable, but it is manageable. This one, the freaking motor fell off, and in TSB, the separation resulted from damage by improper maintenance procedures, which led to the failure of the pylon structure. And I'm sure in the report, it goes into more detail as to contributing factors to that. But human error does happen, and you just need to keep asking why. A couple of different types of error: unintentional. Unintentional error is an accidental wandering or deviation from accuracy. Y'all make the call if it's cool or not, standing on the toolbox. This can include an error in judgment, slip opinion, poor reasoning, carelessness. That could be an unintentional mistake. Another unintentional mistake, transposing 2.6 with 6.2, or I guess, unfortunately, maybe more common, foot pounds instead of inch pounds. That can cause problems as well. An example of an unintentional mistake would be selecting the wrong work card. I'm not going to use Macaulay manual on that motor, right? Intentional, unfortunately, does happen, but intentional error should be considered a violation. If someone knowingly or intentionally chooses to do something wrong, it is a violation, which means that one has purposely deviated from safety practices, procedures, and standards or regulations. I'm not sure where I got the quote from, but essentially this mechanic just couldn't be bothered to go get the right screws, and the freaking windscreen blew out. So that would be considered intentional. Now, I am neither going to confirm nor deny whether I was the person taking that picture, nor am I going to identify whom the mechanic and the pilot are in the picture, so please don't ask. The act of error is a specific individual activity that's obvious, falling off a ladder or using the wrong side of the ladder. Latent error is the company issues training poor safety standards that led up to the event. An example, AMT climbs up the ladder to do a repair, knowing that the ladder is broken and fell off. That's an active. A latent error was the latent error was the broken ladder that somebody should have replaced. Luckily, these guys never fell off, but just for fun, you guys might be familiar with this one. I don't know if the volume's up when he hits his head. If the volume's up, you actually hear his head. It's pretty bad. Y'all know, right? No, it's all right. I'm trying to get done anyway. Dirty Dozen, you guys are all familiar with those, right? There's sign posters up everywhere. So we're going to go through them real quick. And the idea of them is understanding the interaction between the organizational work group and individual factors that may lead to errors and accidents. AMTs can learn to prevent, manage, or prevent them proactively in the future. Going to go through them real quick, you guys. We're behind time, so bear with me on this. Lack of communication. I used to say in the Air Force, we used to say in the Air Force, communication is the key to air power, specifically when people weren't communicating accurately to prove a point. But it is true. Without communication, you're not getting a whole lot done. So lack of communication is a key human factor that can result in suboptimal, incorrect, or faulty maintenance. It's pretty obvious, you guys. You need to be able to communicate with your colleagues to make sure that no steps are missed or nothing is omitted. In 8083, it does talk about this, and I kind of emphasize it. If you're unsure, ask. And I tell my students at school, they walk out with the A&P certificate. That doesn't mean they know everything. They need to know to ask an experienced mechanic, so I stress that. Complacency. Been doing a job a long time. You might turn up like, don't be White Goodman. Y'all familiar with the dodgeball? Don't get complacent. Don't get too cocky. A repetitive task, sure, it can. You've done it 100 times. You know how to do it. You don't need to look behind this panel. That kind of thing. False assumption that the inspection is not important just because you've done it 100 times. You've never found a fault. Not a reason not to complete the task card as required. And don't let your mind wander. If you do find yourself with your mind wandering, read the checklist. Do it step by step. The graphic in the Air Force, our kind of motto for the mechanics, I wasn't going to identify which specific one, crew chiefs, was for, and I say that lovingly, was for, in maintenance, real easy. You read a step, you do a step, you get a banana. Read a step, do a step, get a banana. That's the way it's supposed to go. So, executing the proper paperwork draws attention. Yeah, so if you're filling out the paperwork properly, you might identify something that you missed. Stay mentally engaged. All the inspections are important. Don't get complacent with them. Never sign never sign for work that you've never done. Shout out to my fighter pilot buddies from the Air Force. Lack of knowledge. No offense if there's any air fighter pilots have a tendency to have a lack of knowledge. Yeah, they do. Lack of knowledge is when performing aircraft maintenance can result in faulty repair. Can have catastrophic events, obviously. I got stories about new mechanics showing newer mechanics, hey, I've never done this before, but we'll figure it out. I'm just, oh my God. So if you don't know, ask. I'll leave it at that. Read a step, do a step, get a banana, follow the instructions. Always be aware of the differences exist in design and procedure in different areas. Another thing I tell my students, we teach them how to R-square a wheel assembly on a Cessna 150. That don't mean they know how to go or they're qualified to go remove a wheel assembly on a Dash 8. So I try and stress that there's a bunch of different aircrafts out there that you need to get training and experience on. When in doubt, ask an experienced a mechanic. Another profound statement, A83, when in doubt, ask. I try to emphasize that in the program. If no one's available, to call tech support. Better to delay maintenance and do it right than to screw something up. Just leave it at that. Distractions, they happen. Distraction while performing maintenance on it disrupts the procedures. I mean, it can be anything from if you're working mids at Raven and a plane comes in the middle of January, it gets real cold real fast. The hangar was nice and warm. There's distractions. You guys all know what they are. How do I go back? Yeah, estimated that 15% of maintenance related errors are caused by distractions. It happens. Best thing you can do is try and mitigate them. Can be mental or physical, and something as simple as a phone call from the wife or husband. Hey, can you bring home some lettuce or whatever? Get you distracted. The kind of key point I want to make here is we all have life issues to deal with, which can affect our job performance. Keep that in mind, not only for yourself, but look for your colleagues. If your buddy is stressed out, worried about financial, marriage, whatever the case may be, could be distracted, keep an eye on them. And again, if you do get distracted, follow the checklist, go back 3 steps, make sure you've done everything correctly. Step-by-step written instructions, eat a banana, or do a step, read a step, get a banana. Read a step, do a step, get a banana. Incomplete work can be marked or tagged. If you leave something disconnected, make sure it's obvious, especially at shift change. If you're passing along, you're not quite through, make sure the following shift knows exactly where you're at in the process. Lack of teamwork. Hopefully that's not a problem with you guys. Everybody works and plays well together. For obvious reasons, teamwork is important to get the job done. Great example of teamwork. The whole team's out there on that Virgin jet. Not for sure where everybody is, but multiple technicians contribute to the effort to ensure a single outcome by properly communicating and looking out for one another as they do the job. Teamwork's important. Interpersonal skills. No conflicts in the shop. Never happens. Fatigue. Major human factor that has contributed to many maintenance errors resulting in accidents. Can be mental or physical. Again, if you got stuff on your mind, you could be fatigued as that. If you're not getting good sleep, working 2 jobs. We got a bunch of students working and coming to school. They're younger than me, they can do it, but I'm impressed, but if I tried that, I'd probably be fatigued. So it affects a number of physical issues. Results in increased mistakes, poor judgment, and tiredness is also a symptom of fatigue. Shift work, long hours can suck, but are inevitable in aircraft maintenance. Again, kind of written to a younger crowd of upcoming mechanics. Be aware of the consequences and try to mitigate them as best you can. Coffee is not normally the best solution. It is an awesome solution, but it may not be the best. Exercise, eating right, getting good sleep would probably be a better solution. Wait for it. There's another graph. Sleep, exercise, 8 to 9 hours recommended. Everybody getting that? Oh yeah. Yeah. I got the graphic there because it's like, yeah, thanks. Straight out of 883, you guys don't blame me. Lack of resources. Again, tools, time, training, back to what I said earlier. If you don't got the resources to do your job, it's going to cause problems, obvious. So I kind of don't need to belabor this very much. But tools and parts to maintain the fleet, lack of resources can cause problems. Got to have the right tools to do the right job, right? AOG, you guys know what AOG means. This poor guy, I mean, that's probably the most common aircraft maintenance meme out there. And yeah, I don't know who he is, but I feel for him. You got to have the right tools to do the right job. There it says, and if they're broken, out of cal, missing, get them repaired, calibrated, or find them. Don't improvise with your socket. Tech data, same thing. If you don't got the right tech data, make sure you get it. And it's just as it is equally important to having the proper tools as well. There's no pressure. Who's working 121, 135? Anybody? There's no pressure in aviation maintenance, is there? I will plug, and I don't know if Bob's in here or not, but plug to Raven. I didn't have a whole lot of pressure to, hey, get the job done when I was there, but it does happen, and it's not a good thing. Aviation maintenance tasks require individuals to perform an environment and constant pressure to do things. And where this gets bad, if somebody is on your back too much and trying to make you do something too fast or something that you're uncomfortable with, that's when it gets bad. A little bit of pressure from the lead, maybe encouraging, but not too much. Aircraft mechanics are responsible for overall safety of everyone who uses flying as a mode of transportation. You guys all know that. Sacrificing quality and safety for the sake of time should not be tolerated. So if the DOM's on your back, tell him Wade said, knock it off. Technicians should ask for help if they feel overwhelmed. Have someone check your repair. That's always a good idea. First time I'm doing something, I don't have a problem with asking somebody to come follow up, even if it's not an RII, come make sure that I did it right and asking for a follow-up. I encourage that to the younger mechanics. So, yeah, bring the attention. I don't really think lack of assertiveness is an issue for most maintainers. Where does it say here? Needs to be positive. Express your feel. Do y'all have any issues expressing your feelings or opinions? I don't think that's so much of a issue for AMTs, but it's in here. So good ways to do it. Address managers and supervisors directly by stating the problem, explain what the consequences will be, propose possible solutions, and always solicit feedback to include other opinion. Always give your supervisor and management feedback and do it in as tactful of a way as you can. And if you're dealing with fighter pilots, you can do it like that. Stress, there's a little bit of stress in aviation maintenance. You guys have seen it. That poor guy, he's in 1,000 memes as well, but at any rate, you guys know what we're talking about there. Aircraft must be functional and fly, time on the ground, time or money lost. You guys know the concept. Inspecting, servicing, repairing, timely manner is probably the most prevalent stressor. Again, if you've got somebody on your back, pressure, stress kind of go hand in hand. Too much stress is going to make you miss something, could lead to disaster. And causes of stress are physical, psychological, or physiological. Physical stressors, work environment, temperature, noise. I always think of the fuel cell guys working fighters, guys and gals. Some of the spaces that they crawl into to fix fuel cells is pretty amazing. Stuff that I wouldn't want to do, but physiological stresses or emotional factors, death in the family. Again, life happens, you guys. You're gonna have issues. And then, I'm sorry, psychological. Physiological stresses are fatigue, poor condition, hunger, and disease. If your colleagues, never mind. Lack of awareness is defined as a failure to recognize all the consequences of an action or lack of foresight. Seen it? Yeah, he's gonna get eaten. Lack of awareness. It's not unusual to perform the same steps repeatedly, and if you kind of get lackadaisical, you can miss something. Norms. How many of the young mechanics are going to get that? Probably not very many. Cheers, you got Mr. Peters. Good Lord. There are unwritten rules that are followed and tolerated by most organizations. Negative norms can detract from the established standard. Some norms unsafe, not productive. Taking shortcuts, never a good idea. Any behavior commonly accepted by the group, whether it be standard operating procedure or not, can be a norm. And I'm trying to get to just because that's the way we've always done it, that's never a right answer. I mean, I'll leave it at that. It's because that's the way we've always done it. All right, review. Causes categorized: mean boss, crappy tools, idiot coworkers. $22 an hour, is that stressful? Example of common maintenance errors, straight out of the book, and we'll just go through them real quick. Incorrect installation of components, clearly fitting the wrong parts. Electrical wire discrepancies, including cross connections. By Penair, not from local, but repair station, overhaul facility, I believe was one of the write-ups in that incident accident. Forgotten tools and parts, failure to lubricate, 261. Failure to secure panels, fuel or oil caps, fuel panel is not secured. We've seen a lot of that here recently, you guys, too, is the cowlings on the big jets falling off in flight, but at any rate. Failure to remove lock pins. Paperwork can help you make sure that you're not missing anything. So again, read a step, do a step, get a banana, fill out the paperwork, you should be covered. Chain of events, kind of putting on my accident investigation hat a little bit here, but yeah, typically there's a problem caused something, there's a chain of events that leads up to it. And in the maintenance level, if we stop it there, likelihood of the accident occurring can be drastically decreased. This particular accident, I don't remember the details of it, but bottom line there, oil cap was left unsecured on the left engine. Chain of events happened, and something as simple as an oil chain of events happened, ended up airplane on the ground on fire. So just think about it. Again, why? Another wise chief Air Force type told me, you guys have heard the expression peel the onion back. Okay, we get that. He posed it to me as, think of it as like a 5-year-old asking dad, well, why? So the plane hit the side of the mountain. Why? Because it ran out of gas. Why? Because the whatever crew. Keep asking why, and you'll probably figure out the chain of events. Again, kind of an accident investigation part of it, but something to think about. 5 minutes over. That's what we talked about. And I'm going to throw up the last slide. If anybody's got any questions or wants to talk about the MHEP, I've got some business cards, QR code on it. I'll be available in the back. And again, if you want to Google UAA MHEP, if you've got mechanic helpers or apprentices and you want human factors or any of the other programs, please let me know. And I do appreciate your time. I'll leave you with that.
I can't get to sleep. I think about the implications of diving in too deep, and possibly the complications, especially at night. I worry over situations I know we'll be alright. Perhaps it's just imagination. Day after day it reappears.